Hi and welcome to our second session of the Loud and Clear Communication course. Today we're going to be looking at some really key elements of our talk preparation process. We're going to be looking at illustrations, the stories and the pictures that we paint that bring colour and add interest to our talks and really help people get what we're saying. We're going to be looking at application, which is where we think through what are our audience going to do with what we've told them. And we're going to be looking at structure. How do all of the elements hold together in a way that works for us and our audience? Every single talk needs to have some great illustrations. Illustrations are what are going to bring colour to our talk. They're going to really help people engage with it, be interested in it, and also understand it. Illustrations, it's like the pictures that we paint that say, here's the truth that we're talking about, now let me show you what that looks like. I don't know if you can remember when you were really young, but some of the books that you probably loved the most not only had great words, but they probably had great pictures too. And a talk should be the same, that we're going to really add to the engagement, add to the interest and the way that what people take away from our talks by painting some great pictures. We can do that in a few different ways. So we can talk about what this teaching looks like in practice. It's a very factual way of doing it, no less inspiring, but factual. So if we're talking about God as provider, we want to tell stories of his provision. Those stories can be from our life, they can be the life of our friends, of books, autobiographies that we've read of Christians, also from other places in the Bible. So going away from our central passage, we might want to show where consistently we've seen God do this. So there's the factual way of really demonstrating what the teaching looks like. Then there's the other way that is around maybe an analogy or a metaphor that paints a picture, and it's saying, this is what this is like. So I'll give you an example. Once I told the story of me trying very hard to catch an escaped gerbil. It was mayhem. And at the end of it, I managed to grab this gerbil. This was when I was very young, and it bit me and I shook it free. And I told the story and I took the time telling the story, making my audience laugh as I went. And what I was trying to get to the end of, by the time I'd finished that talk, what I was actually wanting to talk about was the fact that in our own lives, there can be things in our thoughts, processes, in our self-image that can be really painful, a bit like that gerbil bite. And instead of dealing with those things with the Lord, maybe we just drop them. We just think, oh, I don't want to think about that now, that's too painful. But actually, they need dealing with. The gerbil need putting in its cage. Our thoughts, our insecurities, they need bringing before the Lord. And the Bible talks about taking every thought captive and making it obedient to Christ. So I told a story, I took my time with it, I engaged with my audience, we had some fun together, but at the end of it, the point was clear. Let's take hold every thought captive and bring it under the lordship of Jesus. Stories like this work really well. They relax us. Naturally, as we're telling the story, our voices change. And as our voices change, that also helps that engagement with our audience. Often they're memorable, partly because they make people laugh, although not necessarily. And then as people remember the story, right, Ali was talking about a gerbil today, it leads them to be able to recollect the truth that we were drawing out. Stories, they don't have to be funny, but they should be relatable. So Jesus was great at this. He told stories all the time. It's hard to ever come across any of Jesus' teaching where he's not saying, the kingdom of God is like this, or this is what this looks like. And he's talking about sons, and he's talking about sheep, and he's talking about coins, things that they really understood. So it doesn't matter whether these stories are long or short, but they just need to be really useful. They need to serve our one thing that we talked about last time, and they need to be sprinkled throughout our talk so that constantly we're painting these pictures, sometimes in just a really one-off sentence and other times taking longer, to bring that teaching to life and to keep people connected with our material.
2 years ago, my husband took some of our young people to Malawi for 2 weeks. And and our little daughter, she'd been with us a couple of years, and she'd really connected with me as mum. So we adopted her. She really connected with me as mum. But my husband has got sort of shaved head, big beard. He belches very loudly. He sneezes like the house will come down. Like, he's loud, he's big. And our little daughter was a little bit wary of him, and she hadn't really bonded with him. And like every day when he came home from work, he would play with her and he would take her upstairs. And the little routine was that he would take her to the bath and bath her. And every night she would scream, "I don't want you! I want my mummy!" Like every night for 2 years. To the point that I was like, "Jace, are you okay with this?" Because like she really doesn't, every night she's like, "I don't want you." And Jason's like, "Rach, she's my daughter. I love her. Like, I will do whatever it takes for her to know she is safe. She's my girl. I love her. We're going to get there. We're going to get there." Anyway, so he went to Malawi for 2 weeks. And I was a bit nervous thinking, like, when he comes back, like, how is she going to be with him? Because is this like this separation? Is this going to be like, is this going to be it? Are they going to ever get a relationship going? So we went to Terminal 5 to wait for Jason and the teenagers that went to Malawi. And so my daughter dressed up in her Frozen dress. And we'd done a big poster saying, "Welcome home, Daddy." And I'd done all the right things that mum should do, like giving her loads of white sugar and Coca-Cola. So she was not crazy. And we were stood there at Terminal 5 waiting for them to come off the plane. And the plane was delayed, and she was so grumpy, and she just wanted to get it out of the way and get home. And I was like, "No, we're going to wait for Daddy," thinking, "Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? Like, this could be awful." And then people began to walk through the doors. And my little daughter just stood there like this. And she began to shout. She was 3 years old. She began to shout, "You're not my daddy!" to everyone coming through the door. "You're not my daddy!" And you know what I'm like? I'm like, "Welcome to England. Hi." There's weird things happening there. "You're not my daddy." And this went on for quite a long time until she saw her daddy. And the years of him loving her and demonstrating to her that he loved her, he wasn't going to let her go. She could dress him up like a unicorn. He was going to be cool with that. And even though she would be pounding his chest saying, "I don't want you," he would still be loving her and caring for her and nurturing her. And 2 years of that meant that when he walked through the door, just like this, she shouted, "You're my daddy!" And she ran to him, boldly approached. Years of being loved, boldly approached.
So I'm here with my really good friend Rachel, and Rach, you are a brilliant storyteller.
Oh, thank you.
I love hearing you in action when you're telling a story. Is that something that's come naturally to you, or have you had to work on it?
Oh, I think I love stories. I tend to remember stories because they have quite an emotional impact to me. I also was a youth worker working in high schools for many years and learned that the best way, if you've got like a 5-minute assembly with loads of year 10s, the best way to hold their attention is through stories. So it's both a kind of a natural thing that I have, but also I've kind of honed it over years.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about a talk, you've got a talk and,
Yeah.
and you're thinking about a story that's going to sit in that talk, what kind of things are you looking for that story to bring to your talk?
Well, I think I try and start not with a story, but with the main point I want someone to go away and wrestle with. Yeah. And then I'll look for 2 types of story. The first is an illustration. So maybe it's a concept or an idea I'm trying to explain. So I look for a story to illustrate that.
Yeah.
The other type of story that I look for is one that has a bit of an emotional punch to it that probably sums up everything that I'm trying to say with the talk. And I tend to use that kind of story right at the end.
Okay, so you would use some of those stories, like you're almost driving to that high point, the big point.
Yeah.
And the story that we heard you tell in our clip earlier, love that one. It makes me cry every time I hear it. Talk to me about that story and how you used it and what you were thinking about.
Well, at the time that it happened, I wasn't thinking, "Oh, this is a great story for a sermon." I was just in the moment going, "Wow, this is incredible." But when I went away from the situation and began to reflect on it, I did think, oh, that says something really true about God, because all truth is God's truth, isn't it? So something that lands big in our lives and brings God's truth to us often is a really good indication this is a good story for others.
Yeah.
So I use that as a way of helping people sort of grab the enormity of what you're trying to say. We can't get our brains around how God loves us. We can't really reason and understand these enormous concepts. So stories do that for us, because they kind of give us a landscape in which we can play this idea. And so, one way of thinking about it is an adopted child running to an adopted dad and defying everything and saying, you're my dad. And that gives you a kind of a glimpse of God's love. And an example of illustration, so I often talk about sex, that's one of my go-to subjects, but an illustration would be something like, what I use a lot is my husband and I walking around a lake. It was really stormy, the wind came off the lake, and he's quite solid, it didn't affect him, but it threw me up in the air and smashed me to the ground. He laughs his head off and blah blah blah. Now, it's not an emotional story, and many people listening might not have walked around a lake, they haven't had that experience, but what they're hearing me say is actually purity, choosing God's boundaries for relationships, makes us strong. So that when the storms of life, when temptation comes our way, rather than being swept off our feet, there's this strength in us that means we can hold steady. So that's an illustration. That illustrates the power of purity. But if I wanted to choose a story that really helps somebody understand a bit more emotionally, gets in this landscape language for purity, I might tell a story about my own wrestles with sex, my own struggles with sexual temptation, with masturbation, whatever it is. And it might be quite a private, personal, authentic story that I've thought quite hard about. So I'm deliberately choosing what I'm saying about it, because I think that is a story that would give somebody that sense of, oh, that's what it would look like then to say, God, come and find me here and help me with this.
Yeah, and so within that, you've got a couple of criteria then that you're or filters that help you choose a story. And is there anything else when you're thinking about a story to use?
Well, I find that I have to be really hard on myself, because the more you'll find, don't you, the more that you do teaching and preaching, the more that your antennae is up for a great story. And sometimes I hear things, or things slightly happen to me but don't fully happen. And I'm like, oh, I could just massage that and turn that into a great story, but that wouldn't be true. So I have to be really vigilant with myself that I'm not reading back into something that happened, something that wasn't there, because I think the stories have to be authentic. You can't be standing there lying just to kind of drive a point home. So that's one of my filters as well. But I think also whatever you're going through in your life at that time tends to be the fertile ground for stories. So if you're at college, if you're sitting at GCSEs, if you are struggling with a cold, if you've got stuff around relationships, if you're a parent, whatever it is, mind that situation, because that is where God's teaching you the most about who he is. And that's where the everyday stories will be flinging your way that you can turn into something that would really help other people. I will really interrogate myself so that I'm not just choosing a story to get kind of like joke points. Because I think I often feel I'm not a very funny speaker. So I'm sometimes like, oh, I've got to put some funny stories in there. And that doesn't really work for me. They're funny if they're real, then people laugh. And I also interrogate the story. I kind of think, what is the one thing in here? Because you can hear from me, I'm a waffler. You know, I could start this shaggy dog's tale way back in the past, and by the time it comes to the punch, everyone's like, what, where, who, when? And you can't do that. You've got to be a little bit ahead of your audience, but taking them to a point where they get to the punch with you. But I quite like breaking the guessing machine. So you take them somewhere and they think you're going to go there, but you go here. And I think the master of this is Priscilla Shearer. So if you get to hear her ever tell stories, she takes you on this story and you think, oh, I know the point she's going to make. And then she makes a slightly different one. It's very, very powerful.
Love it, love it. Well, it's brilliant to have you, Rachel. So much truth.
And I like your stories, Ali, too.
Thank you so much. There we go. We love each other's stories. We love each other. Thanks, Rach. So now we want to give some thought to application. That's where we begin to think, what does this teaching actually look like in our everyday lives? So if we're encouraging people to deepen their personal relationship with Jesus, how are they going to do it? What we don't want to do is leave people going, well, that was a great talk, really interesting, but sort of so what? What does it really matter? We want to really help them land why it matters, what they're going to do with what they've heard, and give some practical ideas of how that could be lived out. So if we were speaking about encouragement and the importance of us using our words to encourage, well, let's give people a challenge. So maybe even today you could send a text to somebody that you want to encourage. Just call out, draw out something that they do or something about their character that you love and that you think reflects Jesus. Send them a text and let them know. Really, everyday, doable examples are great. As we're thinking about the application, it's a great chance to remind ourselves, as with every part of our talk preparation, what does this look like for my audience? And so you know who you're going to be addressing. Are you addressing your youth group? Is it a particular congregation in your talk? Is it all age? Are there going to be non-Christians there? Hopefully that's going to be the case. And it doesn't mean that we tailor every element of our talk to them. And with application, it doesn't mean that we have to say, now, if you're a single mum, it looks like this. Or if you're an old age pensioner in retirement, it looks like this. We don't have to be that specific, but we should be thinking that through and making sure that we give examples of how this might look. Going back to deepening our everyday relationship with Jesus, thinking about what does that look like for someone who's spending hours commuting? What does that look like for someone whose kids wake up at 5:30 in the morning? Then we can just begin to give out a few different examples so that everybody could think, I could do that. If you get stuck when thinking about application, as with any other part of talk preparation, step back from your material. Spend some time again with God, just talking and dreaming with Him. What would it look like, God, if your people really got this? What would it look like for whole communities to see people doing this stuff? And as you begin to pray with the Lord about that, as you begin to dream dreams, then you can paint those pictures for people. When we've really given some thought to our application, then we just need to think, where in the talk is this going to sit? And we begin to think about our structure. A bit like a skeleton in a body. You need the skeleton. It's what holds everything in the right place and makes it work. And so we're going to think about how we're going to structure our talk. And to do that, I'm going to return to the flower image that we talked about in our one thing. So we're going to hold on to our one thing, and then every element is a petal. This is a talk that I did from Psalm 40. So to start with, Josh, would you read to us Psalm 40 verses 1 to 3?
I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in Him.
Okay, so the thing that I wanted to draw out mainly from this psalm was this whole idea that God had been speaking to me about over quite a long period of time, which is this thing of stand firm. From the passage, there were several things that I wanted to talk about, so I'm going to start by putting them there, and they're basically the ones that I've just highlighted over there. So talking about God, talking about the slimy pit, talking about the firm place, talking about the song, and then talking about how it affects others, really. Many will hear, so I'm going to write others. But I had other elements, and so I'm just going to quickly talk to you about some of these other elements, and a lot of them were about my own experience. So I talked about a time of real insecurity that for me, I used the image of the stage that I was speaking on, to talk about how I would hang at the back of the stage because I was insecure. So there's a story about that. There was a story about me going to a very posh hotel in a very beaten up Toyota Corolla. I turned up on the day of a Maserati convention, and so I talked about that. I talked about some shiny shoes that I bought to remind me that when I looked down, to really remind me every time the sparkle of my shoes caught my eye, to remember that God had placed me, and that where He had placed me, it was time for me to stand. And then, of course, within these ones here was the unpacking of the scripture themselves. And as part of that, unpacking the kind of context for this psalm. So pretty much, give or take, that was the talk. But how on earth am I going to structure it? Anyone want to go with what they think would be a strong way to start the talk? Yep, Dan.
I think a good place to start would be the story of the Toyota. So it's like a funny story to start it off, and you sort of relax.
Yeah, great. So there's a good idea for where we could start. Anyone else?
You could also start with the story of the shoes.
Yeah.
And how you're standing firm with where God placed you.
Yeah. So kind of you're starting with the finished product almost. This is a picture of security. So I actually did at one point start with the picture of insecurity. And so that could be another one. All right, so we've got a few ideas. Now, anyone want to say maybe where we want to be driving to? Where do we want to end?
You could go through the 3 verses in order, so you end with putting your trust in God, because that's going to be a big thing on helping you standing firm.
Yeah, totally. Is there anything in here that you're thinking, this is where you really want to be leading people? This is almost like the high point of the talk. This is let's spend a bit of time in there. Although we've got all these elements going on, there's one that we really want to sit in.
The idea of the firm place, somewhere that you feel secure.
Yeah. Talk to me about this. Is there anything that you're thinking, yeah, I feel like you want to get to that sooner, you want to leave that till a bit later?
I feel like with the hear my cry, because you're talking about insecurity, I think you can bring that in near the intro, but middle-ish, just to say God hears us, we can cry out to him.
Great. Anyone else got any thoughts? Dan?
I think maybe with the slimy pit, maybe sort of near the beginning, sort of maybe contrast what it might be like now compared to what it could be in the future.
Yeah, and that's actually what I did. The way I structured it was I did exactly that. I started with the Toyota Corolla story. It relaxes me, it's quite funny, so it relaxes my audience. And then I moved into talking about the fact that we often, as God's people, feel like the Toyota Corollas in a car park of Maseratis, but actually God has security for us and he has freedom for us. And then I went through the Psalm. I talked a little bit about the Psalm in general. And then actually I really spent some time talking about the slimy pit, and describing that, talked about God moving us to a firm place, and I illustrated that in 2 ways. I talked about my kind of slimy pit of the stage and then me with my sparkly shoes, really. And then I talked about this kind of, what does it feel like? What does it look like? And this word song, and I talked about the page boy at the wedding. And then I moved it to really this idea that as David found security, it led to freedom for other people, that many others came to a place of trusting, that actually when we find our place of security, it releases other people. And then there was some sort of end that was just really summing it all up. What I want to say about structure is it's not right or wrong. All of the things that you guys said here were really valid, and if this was your talk, you've got freedom to think, where do you want to start? What is the order? It would have worked just as well to have started with the heard my cry, because actually that was earlier on in the Psalms. There is no right or wrong. You just want to make sure that your structure is smooth, so you're taking people from petal to petal, and that it is logical. What do you need to say now in order to say something later? And where am I driving towards? Where is this going? Where is the high point? No right or wrong way. It's something that you need to play with. Just think of those 2 words, smooth, logical. So in today's session, we've looked at our illustrations, how we're going to really paint pictures that bring our teaching to life. We've looked at application, how we help people think through what the teaching could look like for them. And we've looked at structure, how we really lead people through the body of our talk in a way that is logical, in a way that they can follow us. In our next session, we're going to be talking about our body language and our delivery, and why these 2 elements are so important when we think about giving great talks.